Well, I think we're ready.
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to call this meeting of the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board to order. As you all know, we don't have an agenda tonight. We have no business, but I do have an announcement to make. Our planner, Art Brode, his sister just died yesterday, and so he won't be with us tonight. And so I will be carrying on as best I can. Does anyone else have any announcements? What I'm going to do is adjourn this meeting and then go right into the workshop. And what we're going to do tonight is go through the EAF for this Hudson Solar project and determine what further studies, what further information we need that we don't feel we have in our possession now. We'll be making recommendations to the planning board for our October 16th meeting from this workshop as to what of those studies we actually wish to pursue. We're not going to be taking any action tonight on anything. This will be strictly a workshop. So that's how that's going to work. Could I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting, the planning board meeting?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Very good.
You have your motion letters down?
Yeah, I got that. All right. This is going to be a mess, these minutes. Would you mind?
No, not at all.
And the meeting is adjourned at 6:32. We're going into the workshop now. Never fear.
Your note. I'll give it to you.
In case you don't have it, it's a copy that will be going on. I do have a few more copies of the EAF if anyone would like one. There you go. Sure. Okay. Now, what we normally do when we go over these...
Sharon need to formally recuse herself at every meeting.
Yes, and just so the record shows that Sharon has recused herself from participating in the workshop. And Eric was not sure he'd be here. He's picking up his wife at the airport, so he may not make it. Okay, what we're going to do is go over this, hopefully in a quick manner, see what information we have and what information we still need. I think the first section's probably project and sponsor information is accurate. The government approvals, funding, or sponsorship seems to be inclusive. Under the planning and zoning, will administrative or legislative adoption or amendment of a plan, local law, ordinance, rule, or regulation be the only approvals which must be granted? And the answer, of course, is no. Under adopted land use plans, do any municipally adopted city, town, village, or county comprehensive land use plans include the site where the proposed action would be located? At this point, the answer given is yes. If yes, does the comprehensive plan include specific recommendations for the site where the proposed action would be located? And the answer is no. Is the site of the proposed action within any local or regional special planning district, Greenway, Brownfield, Opportunity Area, designated state or federal heritage area, watershed management plan, or order, or other? And the answer is, at this point, no. Is the proposed action located wholly or partially within an area listed in an adopted municipal open space plan or an adopted municipal farmland protection plan? I believe it is not part of Ag District 20, and I don't know of any other open space plan that the town has yet adopted that would include any area within the town. Under zoning, it gives the district RC5. Is the use permitted or allowed by special permit or conditional use permit? The answer is yes. Is a zoning change requested as part of the proposed action? The answer is no. School District Rhinebeck, New York State Police, Rhinebeck Police, Dutchess County Sheriff are the police agencies here. Fire protection is the Rhinebeck Fire Department. And what parks serve the project site? None. Okay. Under proposed and potential development, what's being proposed is a solar power plant. We have the acreages here. The total acreage of the site of the proposed action is 2.05 acres, and the total acreage of the site is 16.1 acres. It is not the expansion of an existing project or use. It is not going to involve subdivision. It will not be constructed in multiple phases. Does the proposed action include new non-residential construction? The answer, of course, is yes. Total number of structures, 20 racks. The dimensions given here are 7 feet 8 inches in height, 155 feet wide, and 595 feet in length.
Mike, can we just stop for a second here?
Yeah.
Where you showed a fire protection, that would be zoning item C. It says medical services. You probably should include Northern Dutchess paramedics.
Yes. Okay, thanks, Woody. Okay. Does the proposed action include construction or other activities that will result in the impoundment of any liquids? No. Project operations. Does the proposed action include any excavation, mining, or dredging during construction operations, or both? The answer is no, as I understand it.
Question,
Yes.
what about the building of a berm?
Yeah, major
That would,
excavation.
yeah, that would be.
Do we have any proposed plan for that and the volume of?
Not yet. No, I haven't seen it. I think part of what's going to be done is we're going to have I want to have a visual analysis done and see what the person has to tell us recommends. Does he recommend a berm? Does he recommend fencing? Does he recommend foliage? Does he recommend a combination of things? Can this be done? And based upon his recommendations, we're going to have to finalize any specific plans for
I
screening.
very strongly disagree with that. We're going to get recommendations and we are going to choose.
True, but we're going to
They're just
use...
recommendations. What
I
do you
realize
recommend?
the recommendations, but none of us are experts in this field, and we're
Right,
going to
but-
use an expert, and I would think if the recommendation is well-founded, we would be inclined to follow his recommendation or her recommendation.
That's fine. I myself am inclined to go along with the berm because it's natural, it blends in, the vegetation, you're not going to see it. You almost look at a mountain.
And that may well be what we're
We
going to
would be
do.
crucified if we allowed fence to go up there.
That may well be what we're going to do, but tonight, we're not looking at specific
Agreed.
answers.
Did we ever make a motion to hire this person?
No, we're going to get to that. What we're
Okay.
doing tonight is we're going to come up with recommendations of what studies we believe we need, people we think might be good for it, and in 2 weeks, when the planning board meets again, we will
Agreed.
make final agreement on what we
Agreed,
want to
but As
do.
we answer these,
Correct.
it's critical that we answer them correctly.
I agree.
And if there's any issue, we need to state our position tonight.
I would not
That's just good
prejudge,
practice
I would
when
not
we're doing-
prejudge what we think ought to happen at this point in
No,
time.
not projection, just state why we're answering a certain way. I think that's important for the
No, that's
records.
fine, but you don't want to prejudge what's going to happen until we actually have the full information to make
Right.
that determination.
Michael,
Okay, yes.
on this issue of excavation,
Mhm.
so we're going to answer that potentially yes.
Yes.
Right?
Potentially, yes.
We don't know for sure. But even though we're answering potentially yes, it's not possible currently to answer the questions that follow.
No, it's
Until we
not.
have more information.
Correct. If the berm is recommended, what size, how much material, how high, how wide, where exactly on the site it would be situated, things of that sort. No, we're not in a position to answer that at this point.
So what should we write here?
Well,
To be determined?
I think that's the only thing we can do at this point, yeah. This is one of the things that we need to have looked into to see whether or not this is a viable way to screen and exactly what it's going to take to do it.
So it's going to be determined depending upon whether a berm is decided upon.
Yes.
So we can, since we're answering yes, we can answer the question, what is the purpose of the excavation? It's for
Screening.
screening. We have to put to be determined under the volume, and over what duration of time to be determined.
Mhm. And over nature of characteristic materials, total area to, well, not dredge, total area to be excavated if we wish to discuss it that way in terms of material brought in.
Until we get a
Yeah.
proposal, right?
Okay. Would the proposed action cause a result in alteration of, increase, or decrease in the size or encroachment into any existing wetland, water body, shoreline, beach, or adjacent area? The answer we have is no. Looking at the Hudsonia maps and our wetland maps, I don't see one there. But I think one thing that our planning law requires is a habitat study for any special use permit or site plan. And when we get to that, what I'm going to suggest is that we ask Hudsonia or some similar organization on this site to do a habitat assessment and a habitat study to determine exactly what is there. The other questions we'll get to, I think, will sort of fill this out a little bit more. But at that point, I think we're going to need to look into that because it does require, for a special use permit, a habitat study done under our zoning law.
And who might we ask to do that?
Hudsonia has done the actual
Right.
habitat work in Rhinebeck. They'd be the first ones I'd go to just because they've done it, and they have a good reputation, and they tend to be very objective.
But now, at our last meeting, we established the fact that we weren't relying on Hudsonia because that's what the pond excavation was relying on, and they used that, and we decided that they needed to do an actual study.
No, basically, the
They
pond
relied
excavation.
with, they had approval from
Oh,
DEC and everything,
From
and they used all the
DEC.
Hudsonia data.
well, DEC used it. I spoke with, you're talking about the baker.
Right, but
Okay, I spoke with the person who did the work for DEC. I spoke with her, asked her, what studies did you do? And she said they looked at the New York State list, whether they knew of any rare species of plant or animal
Okay.
there. They looked at some maps, but they did not apparently do any on-site work. I said, do you have any records of anything else you did? And she said, if I have them, I'll send them. That was 2 weeks ago, and I've received nothing.
Okay,
So I'm
so-
assuming they may have looked at Hudsonia maps, they may have looked at a number of things, but they did not do what we're going to ask Hudsonia to do, which is an on-site look at the property to see whether or not the suggested habitats actually do exist and whether or not the creatures that might be there actually show signs that they are there.
okay.
Why are we saying Hudsonia when I believe it's the applicant's responsibility to find someone to do that for them? Is that correct?
It's, or we can recommend someone to them
Yeah.
that we will work with.
Well,
I mean,
they're paying for it.
They're going to pay for it through
I
escrow, oh,
understand
yes.
that, But they have the option of picking brand X as opposed to brand Y.
If it's someone that we feel has worked in the past, that we feel their work is objective and that's something we can rely upon, yes.
Isn't the report given to the planning board,
Yeah.
not to the applicant?
Yeah, the report is given to the planning board, not the applicant.
From the applicant.
No, actually from the person doing the work. It goes directly to us, and also to the applicant.
Whose responsibility is it to provide the report? The applicant?
Well, the responsibility is we approve a certain group to do a certain report on a certain topic.
So the applicant will, if they decide to go with Hudsonia, will come before us with a report.
Actually,
We will-
what will happen is,
or not.
through escrow, the escrow amount that we collect, the town actually, through the escrow amount, actually pays for the report. So the report has to come to the town first, so we know it's actually been done before any funds are released from the escrow account.
Right, but that's getting ahead. The applicant has to provide this report in one way, shape, or form.
Yes.
But aren't we, I'm confused because Woody's saying the same thing. Aren't we telling them we're going to do it for you and you're going to abide by the
No,
result?
we're telling them it has to be done. We're recommending someone we've worked with in the
Okay.
past and who the town has worked with and who we think does a good job and someone whose results we would trust. We don't want, my own feeling is we don't want to work with someone we have no knowledge of or someone whose reputation hasn't stood up to scrutiny.
Problem I have with that is there are qualified people out there that we don't know.
I'm sure there
And
are.
if the applicant chooses to pick one of those qualified people that we don't know, I don't think it's our responsibility to say you can't use him.
It is our responsibility to make sure that person is indeed qualified because we're the ones we making the decision on the
There are
permit.
Professional qualifications.
But that's
I agree.
the sort of things we would have to see and that would have to be provided to us because we're the ones who are going to be making the permitting decisions.
Right, so.
So it's on
Not
us.
to throw the word out there, but collusion, I want to make sure that the applicant has the opportunity, and it doesn't look like this is all the same people we always use. It would be refreshing to have a new person.
If the person
And I'm sure they're going
is,
to come up with the solution that, you know.
well, I certainly hope so.
If it's refuted, I have no doubt that someone's going to request a second review.
Well, I would hope that we can do this just once because the applicant is paying for it.
Yep.
And we want to, it's our responsibility to make sure to the best of our ability that whoever is used is indeed reputable and can do the job properly and also in a timely manner.
Am I correct that the contract with these consultants is with the town, though?
That's correct, it's with the town. The town, through the escrow, actually pays the people, so the contract actually is with the town. So, all right, moving right along. On to page 5. Okay, here, Proposed action cause result disturbance of bottom sediments? No, it's not applicable. Will proposed action cause or result in the destruction or removal of aquatic vegetation? No. Okay. Will the proposed action create a new demand for water? The answer is no.
What do we do for the first part up at the top where it says, describe how the proposed action will affect water body or wetland? Example, excavation, fill, placement. Are we required to put something in there for the
No,
berm?
not if it doesn't, no, because it's not filling in a wetland or a water body.
Okay.
No.
And correct me if I'm wrong, there are no streams or anything on this? I thought we had a couple.
Not that I have seen on the maps.
Okay.
But this is another thing. As we all know, the maps are not for site-specific work. You
Correct.
need to get people on the ground to actually see if it's there or not. Will proposed action use or create a new demand for water? The answer is no. Will the proposed action generate liquid wastes? The answer would be no again. So wastewater, sewage questions like that don't count. Okay. Will the proposed action disturb more than 1 acre and create storm runoff either from new point sources, ditches, pipes, swales, curbs, gutters, or other concentrated flows of stormwater, or non-point source sheet flow during construction or post-construction? The answer is no. What we're going to need to do with this is make sure that the site plan and the improvement plans for this thing go through our engineer, Morris Associates, for them to review and ensure that this answer no is indeed accurate.
I'm going to say now I disagree with that answer. I don't understand how you have 1,560 panels that divert water, just like a roof, where we ask people to mitigate and make sure that rainfall is directed away from, I mean, it's a potential, water, surface, runoff. I mean, the answer is yes, obviously.
Not
Whether it has
necessarily.
an impact or not,
Not necessarily, because the water is going down underground that has not been tamped, that is still planted, that is still pervious surface. So you're not working over an impervious surface. Generally, what you happen with this type of a question is you're dealing with impervious surfaces like a parking lot, or let's say they were asphalting it and then putting the units in, something of that sort, where the
no,
water
the
would
question
run
is
off the
about
site.
stormwater runoff. So for a house.
Run off the
or a
site,
park-
running off the site.
Right, but it's creating, I have a field and I put a bunch of panels on it, so how's the water going, it's all going to hit down. And unless it's properly vegetated and drained, it's going to create trenches just by dripping like the side of your houses. There's going to definitely be an impact.
Well,
Question is how big of an impact?
It's supposed to be properly vegetated, and I can also speak from my own experience, because I do have ground-mounted panels at my house, and it's properly vegetated under it, and the only thing that's made any impact on it, which was unpleasant, was a woodchuck.
Right, but our question is very simple. Will the proposed action disturb more than 1 acre? Yes. And create stormwater runoff? Yes. Either from a new point sources, i.e. ditches, pipes, swales, curbs, gutters. So the answer is yes.
No, it's not.
It's a bad thing.
It's runoff from the
All right,
site,
so
which
for
would
the
go into
record-
other properties.
I'm saying it's yes, and we disagree. Okay.
On this point, whether we agree or disagree, the town engineer will still be reviewing this
Absolutely.
technical aspect, because we're not qualified to make a
Correct.
technical decision on that.
Correct. No, a lot of this is going to go to the town engineer. Does the proposed action include or will it use on-site one or more sources of air emissions, including fuel, combustion, waste incineration, or other processes or operations? The answer to that is no. Will the proposed action generate or emit methane? No. Will the proposed action result in the release of air pollutants from open-air operations or processes such as quarry or
Did you do
landfill
G at the
operations?
bottom? Did
Yeah.
you do G at the bottom
At the
of
bottom?
page 6?
Oh, no, I didn't, I'm sorry. Will any air emission sources named in D2F above, we didn't name any up there, require New York State Air Registration, Air Facility Permit, or Federal Clean Air Act Title IV or Title V permit? And the answer is no. Okay. We know it's not going to emit methane. There are no open-air operations. There will probably be some dust or things like that during construction, but I don't think that's what they're describing here. I think they're talking about the actual function of the solar panels, what they will do over their lifetime. Will the proposed action result in a substantial increase in traffic above present levels or generate substantial new demand for transportation facilities or services? It certainly will during, it'll some during construction of the site. Once again, if we're referring to the operation of the site, the answer would be no. Will the proposed action for commercial or industrial projects only generate new or additional demand for energy? I think we can safely say the answer is no. Under hours of operation during construction, they are saying Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. There will be no construction on Saturday, Sunday, or holidays. And during operations, for all days, sunrise to sunset. Will the proposed action produce noise that will exceed existing ambient noise levels during construction? And the answer is yes. Provide details, including sources, times of day, and duration. Post-hammering will take 1 week. Other construction work is mechanical, assembly, and electrical work, which is quiet. Will the proposed action have outdoor lighting? The answer is yes. Switch service lights only.
Sorry, I think you just missed something on N.
Yeah, will the proposed action remove existing barriers?
No, I thought you just said during construction, you didn't say operation or hold. Sorry.
You're correct. And one of the questions is, they answered yes to this, certainly for construction. I'm guessing they're saying, they would say no during the period of operation, and that's one of the things that I think we need to have looked at.
So how are we answering that then? Is this open to question during operation?
I think that's one of the things, the questions that has been raised, yes. So I think this is a yes to construction, and we don't know during operation. So that's to be determined.
And we have discussed in the past how we would assess the noise levels during operation. Have we reached any conclusions about what we would be asking for?
I don't believe we have. I think that's one of the things we're trying to sort out, exactly determine how, given our town zoning code, the readings of sound are taken at property lines. And I know when they did the gun club, that's how that was done. I think it was a little easier to do guns and things of that sort. I think we still need to work out a way to ascertain specifically whether or not there will be any noise emitted during operation that would be above ambient levels at the property lines.
Defined as what? Ambient levels?
I think that would be something that'd have to first have someone go out there and see exactly what they are, probably at different times of the day, different times of the year, because as you lose foliage, you tend to have more noise. Sometimes sound carries more in cold air than warm air, so you may have to do a couple of different times to find out what the ambient levels are. I don't think those have been established yet.
And where would one do that? At all property lines?
I think you'd have to go to the four along the sides of the property itself. You know, you go within the property of the applicant and take it at that
At all
point.
sides of the property?
Yeah.
I've made this suggestion myself a couple of times that I'd like to actually see one of these things in operation. I refuse to believe that there's no place else that this company,
A solar farm, if you want to see an operation.
I want to see one this size using this equipment. It's not possible that we're the first ones in the United States.
That's a
Not
question
possible.
I can't answer. I don't know of
But,
any.
you know, I find it hard to believe we're going to take someone's word and say, okay, we're going to plug a refrigerator in the middle of the field, and you're going to go stand over there 300 yards away and see if you can hear it.
Well, if you can find one that we could visit, or we could get
Well,
information from, we could certainly schedule to do
That's
that.
not my job. Our job as a board is to review the noise issue because it's a big issue.
No, I'm just asking you if you can come up with one, not to go to it.
I will do my best.
So you
I'll
can find
research
one,
it.
yeah.
I'll see if I can find something, but
There may well be something near to hand. It may not be
kinda
exactly
counting
the
on
same
Jeff Irish to
size.
throw us a bone and say, yeah, there's one of my competitors up in Rochester or something, and at least give
Well-
people the opportunity to say, if you really want to drive.
Reasonably large-sized ones, one up towards above Germantown, and there's one over in the old Hercules plant area in the Silkus. I don't know the physical
Yeah.
size relative to this one, but they're significant from what I understand.
I think they also have quite a few panels on the top of the Stop and Shop. Well, it's not Stop and Shop anymore. Top of that building, don't they?
Tops, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little different, but nonetheless, it's still a fairly significant installation.
But
Would they let us go on the roof?
They would, I have no question, but you're talking about a whole different environment. You're never going to be able to cut out the noise from Route 9, nor the generators and the coolers and everything in the back of the store. So
No.
how you would go about using it as an example, we're talking about someplace that's a pristine, quiet place at 10 o'clock at night on January 15th, after a snowstorm.
Well, at 10 o'clock at night, it's probably not operating.
Well, but is it making noise? Okay, so let's say it's 12 noon
Yeah.
on New Year's Day.
Would have to be
when it's quiet,
daylight.
because nobody's out anyway. That's, I think, the concern everybody has. Is there going to be a hum? Is there going to be a hum during the day?
Woody, is this one up in Germantown?
I'm not sure where it is, but I've heard people tell me there's a large,
yeah, it's off
Facility up
9
there.
someplace.
9?
On 9?
9 or
Or
9.
it's off, yeah. I can find out. I have
Yeah.
a friend who lives up there.
I'd be interested.
See who owns it, and,
Yeah.
I mean, that's an easy ride for every one of us.
Yeah.
Go up and see it.
Well, it's the same, at some juncture, we as an organization will have to go do a site visit on one of these things. Just like we did when we did the barn out on 308, because of the roof that he was putting up with the light emitting, and we had to go out to Massachusetts to look at it.
so we do have a possibility for that one under to be determined. Okay. Lights, there will be switch service lights only. I don't believe the intent was for these to be motion operated, but I don't know. We can find that out from the
I think he
applicant.
answered no to that. Fixed position, 35 degrees.
So that they won't be, they'll strictly be on and off by someone operating them, not motion
That's
Not-
detectors.
Yeah, on and off, they do not move.
No,
That's my-
no,
but
no
they're-
motion detectors.
They're not turned on by motion.
That's what I'm talking
Like
about.
a deer will not
Right.
turn.
Oh,
on.
no.
Right, that's what I was asking. Motion detector, turning them on. For security, a lot of places have that. Okay. Will the proposed action bulk storage of petroleum over at, I don't believe so. There's been nothing in the application indicating anything that would need some sort of fuel,
Did
such
you
as,
skip O?
Yeah, he did odors.
does the proposed action have the potential to produce odors for more than 1 hour per day? I think the answer would be no.
Right.
Will the proposed action, commercial, industrial, and recreational projects only use pesticides? From the application, we've been told no. They are not going to use any pesticides or herbicides to control vegetation within the area where the panels themselves would be located.
However, I do have a question.
Mhm.
There's been this discussion about pollinators. Typically, if you're going to be planting a large number of new plants, you do something to the ground ahead
Mhm.
of time. So I'd
Yeah.
like to know what's going to be done to the ground before the planting of the pollinators.
So we'd really need to have some sort of a planting plan.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
some people use Roundup to clear the ground, or what's the plan?
Well, they said they're not going to do that, so they're not going to use any pesticides or herbicides.
We'd like to know how they're going
It's going to have to be mechanically
prepare the
done.
ground
Yeah,
for
be
the
mechanically done.
pollinators.
But in addition to the actual set of the solar panels and the pollinators, don't we have a whole site maintenance plan that they said twice a year to keep it down certain?
I believe they were only talking about within the solar panel area,
within the
because
berm or-
outside, yeah, there's going to be, hopefully vegetation allowed to grow and mature, and woody material will come in, and you don't want to cut that down.
Okay.
All right. Will the proposed action, commercial industrial projects only, involve or require the management or disposal of solid waste? The answer given is no. Does the proposed action include construction or modification of a solid waste management facility? No. Will the proposed action at the site involve the commercial generation, treatment, storage, or disposal of hazardous waste? The answer is no. Okay. We're down to land uses on and surrounding project site. The existing land uses in the area listed are residential, rural, forest, agriculture, and St. Paul's Lutheran Church. The land uses and cover types of the project site are given here in terms of forested meadows, agricultural, surface water features, wetlands, bare rock. Is the project...
Can we
Yes.
just spend a minute? I just want to
Sure.
look at this again. When they say forested, I'm not sure if he's including the small cedar trees?
Like the cedar.
Yeah. I
I
don't know
would-
if these are just hardwoods or,
An early succession forest as opposed to a mature hardwood or evergreen forest.
okay, that's all I have on that one.
Is the project site presently used by members of the community for public recreation? The answer given is no. I don't believe that the Landsman Kill has any trails through there, horse trails through there, which is, I think, the only recreational use that might have existed in that area. Are there any facilities serving children, the elderly, people with disabilities? For example, schools, hospitals, licensed daycare centers, or group homes within 1,500 feet of the project site? The answer given is no. Does the project site contain an existing dam? And the answer given is,
Wait, just one second.
Mhm.
On D, the church, does it have any special programs for any of these people?
I don't know.
I
So
was
it's a good
wondering about,
question.
I was wondering about Sunday school or,
So can we, let's put a
Activities.
question mark
Yep.
and check out the church?
It has a Sunday school.
Do they have any daycare facilities, anything like that?
No, but they have a program where, yes, the babysitting service while services are going on. They have I think they have a summer program, a
Summer
Bible
program?
study.
Okay.
They have AA there, but it's
What about the,
That would count.
they have AA there once or twice a week, and they do on Sundays.
Okay. No, that would all count. I'll have to check into that. Okay. We know it doesn't have an existing dam. Has the project site ever been used as a municipal, commercial, industrial solid waste management facility, or does the project site adjoin property which is now or was at one time used as a solid waste management facility? The answer given is no. I'm not aware of any. I know in the old days, farmers used to have their own dumps. I don't know if this area,
I've
But
got
that
one of those
wouldn't
on
be
my property.
that wouldn't be industrial, though.
Yeah, but this is commercial or industrial.
Yeah.
It doesn't imply
Doesn't,
farm.
doesn't, so, I think we have to say no because we're not aware of it.
so that would take to the next question. Have hazardous waste been generated, treated, or disposed of at the site? Or does the project site adjoin property which now or was at one time used to commercially treat, store, and/or dispose of hazardous waste? And the answer given is no.
What is that barn on that property used for, or what is it used for?
It was probably one of the farm outbuildings long, long ago. It doesn't look like it's set up for dairy or anything like that. I don't know
No,
what
it's
it was
definitely
used for.
a storage shed,
Yeah.
garage.
Or for equipment. It doesn't look like a hay barn, but I don't know. I don't know.
My letter, I would say, it just refers to the section to the extent that I feel like things aren't being mentioned that are in there.
Mhm.
I believe there was things dumped on the property. What? I have no idea. I think it was automotive liquids. I don't know if that counts in terms of.
Waste oil, things like that? Antifreeze?
It does.
It does.
And I was told by one of the members of our group that I think Barry Shrug was aware of that. Again, I don't know what's, I've never been on the property, but that was there. And then just on the other page where it talks about surface water features and wetlands, again, my letter, I submitted the Hudsonia map, and I actually spoke to Hudsonia, and they show a stream on the property and a wetland if you look on the geo access. So again, I didn't know the property, well, I know it's not there anymore, but Hudsonia shows it, and the parcel map shows it.
Well, that's why we're definitely going to have someone on the site to actually review the habitat potential there, what's there, so that we know specifically, because the maps oftentimes aren't as accurate as they need to be.
And you guys can also talk to the pastor, because he knows, I think, the things that were dumped on that property.
Oh,
I was told that the property basically, I think, ruined the water table for the church. The church had to bury their well 400 feet below ground or something like that. So I think that there's some issues with that land.
If he could provide that information, it would be very helpful.
Yeah, I'll ask him if
Yeah.
he wants to know what mine is.
And if he has any idea where that dumping actually on the property might have taken place,
Obviously, close enough or enough of it to affect his
his well.
well.
Okay. Does he remember the depth of the well that was polluted? It might give some indication of the amount of material that was dumped.
No, but from what I mean, my well receipt is on GeoAccess from the 80s.
Mhm.
Maybe there's one on GeoAccess, I don't know. But again, it's in my letter, our letter.
Okay.
August 21st. I think it's in the footnote.
Okay. Thank you.
Michael, often when you buy a property, there's an environmental review before closing. That could certainly be done for this. That's different than someone going over the property looking for wetland.
Oh,
habitat.
definitely,
But,
definitely.
you know, they do a search of all of the county records to see whether there's ever been anything like dumping. It should show up in records.
Well,
It should. When I bought my
Yeah.
house, I had an undocumented removal of an oil tank. And the question came into play, did it leak and is that why it was removed? So I had them excavate the site and test the soil because I didn't want to buy a site that had contaminated well.
what did they find?
They didn't find, it came back negative,
Clean?
but it was done so quietly and so quickly that,
Mhm.
you know, there was concern.
Yeah.
This site, you know, it's a shed that was used as a utility shed. Stats Dairy out on Slate Quarry shut their operations down 20 years ago and went through extensive
Yeah.
removal of soils, contaminants. So it's because they did oil changes and repair work. It was a big truck repair shop there, in addition to being next door to a cow barn, a dairy operation. So I think there's concern, and quite frankly, I think G should be a question mark. We don't know.
A maybe?
Yeah, I recommend that we have an environmental review done. There are lots of companies around here that do that.
Okay.
Since you're taking public comment, apparently, please remember that the site that we're talking about is now down to 1.86 acres at the top. We're not talking about the entire site.
Correct.
We're talking about the shed. We're talking about the site of the solar panel.
True. We do want to know, though, if there has been dumping on the site, it would be nice to be able to identify where, so we know that it is in no way going to be disturbed by any construction, anything going on the specific site where the proposed plant is going to go. Because it's possible, I know that, on my property, someone backed up to the back of it and dumped engines and all sorts of stuff right by the Crum Elbow. So I know that there was a tendency in the good old days to just dump on any open piece of land that wasn't either an active farming or some other function, and they're all over the place. I think anyone who has any large piece of property, if they really look, they'd find dumps, scattered around their property,
So I think-
unfortunately.
I think the question should be restricted to the site of the solar power plant.
I don't know if I agree with that, sorry, Jeff, but this is a site plan. We're not looking at the envelope of a little house. This is a subletted piece of property on a site. So our responsibility is, even though the driveway isn't part of your 1.6 acres, you're still driving up through there, and it's a site. It's a piece of property, and we're using the property as a whole to make sure it meets limitations. If there's wetlands around us, that's got to come into play.
The
The
driveway
site
is
is
not-
16 acres.
The driveway is not part of our site.
I would just say at the last meeting, I think you guys were talking about perhaps other parts of this property being needed to add to the screening. So
Yeah.
maybe 1.86 is the plant, but there might be some spot near Jacqueline's house that has to be maintained as wooded, so that way she doesn't see this thing. And so to the extent there is dumping sites wherever on this place and it's gonna inhibit growth of something, I
So-
think that's.
Well,
Thank you.
actually,
My position is, unless we're doing a subdivision, the site is 16 acres. I don't know why
Actually-
that would not be obvious to
Yeah.
anybody else.
I think the problem is, and I did not realize this was in the solar law, The site is actually defined as the leased area for the plant, and it's limited to approximately 2 acres. It can't be more than that. So in other words,
How convenient is that?
well, I'm just saying that that's, just bring it to
Okay.
your attention. I did not realize that, because I thought that the whole property could be used as screening if necessary, but apparently that's not the case.
So does that mean the screening has to be contained in the 1.86 acres?
I'm going to ask for an interpretation on that. That's,
Because that might,
if you read it, it suggests that, but the zoning enforcement officer is the one who actually has to make that determination, and/or the zoning board of appeals. It sounds like that, but to be officially correct, we have to put those questions to the people authorized to make those decisions.
so that means.
I haven't found it yet. I never
Have to be
one of these other things.
inside a fence,
I'd like to know
where
where
the
that
site is.
That is it's a possibility, yes, yeah. Okay. Potential contamination history, I think this goes with what we just did. I think G and H go
question mark.
together. I think G and H go together. Okay. Is the project site subject to an institutional control limiting property uses? The answer says no. I don't know of any. Natural resources on or near project site. What is the average depth of bedrock? 7+ feet. Are there bedrock outcroppings on the project site? The answer is no. The predominant soil type is given, and the average depth to water table is 20+ feet. The site is described as well-drained, 100% of the site. Approximate proportion of the proposed action site with slopes, 0 to 10%, 100% of site. Are there any unique geologic features on the project site? The answer given is no. Okay, under surface water features, does any portion of the project contain wetlands or other water bodies, including streams, rivers, ponds, or lakes? The answer given is no, and I think this is what we're trying to make sure we have someone actually go in there and ground truth what is actually there.
So that's to be determined.
It's to be determined, I think, yes. And it goes on to answer other questions. It's not listed as a floodway or 100-year floodplain or 500-year floodplain under the FEMA map, so those answers are no. Is the projected site located over or immediately adjoining a primary, principal, or sole source aquifer? From the mapping I've seen, the answer is correct here. It's no.
Okay, just again, on page 2, if any wetlands or other water bodies adjoin the project site, if the site isn't just a perimeter fence, then Phil Ferrati's property has a lot of water on it. It's about adjoins it. And my property isn't joined, but it's within 500 feet, and I'm in Merle Pond, so I don't know if that's.
I think the entire section H is to be determined.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, and I think there are other things here that are to be determined. Identify the predominant wildlife species that occupy or use the project site, and deer are listed, but I know that commonly we have a great many more even just regular type critters out there. I'm sure there's fox there, I'm sure there's coyote there, raccoon, possum, and bird species of different varieties. So I think that's something that also, is to be determined.
But the key word here is predominant.
Well,
That's predominant.
well, there are enough of them, but
in
I
Turkey.
would say predominant is turkey in our.
I was just going to say turkeys and white-footed mice
Yeah.
and ticks. I had to get that in because, I just got off the docks of cycling. Does the project site contain a designated significant natural community? That's to be determined as well. We don't know. Does the project site contain any species of plant or animal that is listed by the federal government of New York State as endangered or threatened, or does it contain any areas identified as habitat for endangered or threatened species? Once again, that's what we wish to have looked into. Does the project site contain any species of plant or animal that is listed by New York State as rare or as a species of special concern? Once again, that's something we wish to have looked into. I know we do have Blanding's turtles in the general area. I know we have wood turtles. And I know those are, the Blandings turtle is threatened, and the wood turtle is one of special conservation concern, highest priority.
And also spotted turtle.
Oh, okay.
It's similar.
Is the project site or adjoining area currently used for hunting, trapping, fishing, or shell fishing? The answer is no, but I would suspect that it has been used for hunting.
I can't imagine, I mean, the woman across the street.
Yeah, exactly.
Her customers are
Are
hunters.
hunters, so I would have to
Come up
say,
there to walk across, wherever they can.
there may not be permission, but I would have to say, yes, I'm sure it's used for hunting. Okay, designated public resources on or near project site. Is the project site or any portion of it located in a designated agricultural district certified pursuant to the Ag and Markets Law? It's not, a lot, land in that area is part of Ag District 20, but this particular parcel is not. Are agricultural lands consisting of highly productive soils present? The answer given is no, given what they said the earlier type of soil, predominant soil type was. I'm taking that probably from the Soil and Water District maps, soil maps, would suggest that they're not some of the highly prized ag soils. Does the project site contain all or part of, or is it substantially contiguous to a registered national natural landmark? I don't know of any in the town of Rhinebeck. And I know we don't have any CEAs either at this point in time, which I guess is the next question. Is the project site located in or does it adjoin a state-listed critical environmental area? The answer is no. Does the project site contain or is it substantially contiguous to a building, archaeological site, or district which is listed or has been nominated by the New York State Board of Historic Preservation for inclusion on the state or national register? The answer is yes, St. Paul's Lutheran Church. We have some questions about exactly what's going on here. We know we have a bunch of listed, local listed, the multi-resource and local listing for we know historic structures, and I would guess that they might be eligible for nomination. We have not been able to find paperwork that that step has been taken. Not that that necessarily diminishes their historic significance or value. It's just in responding to the specific question.
Well, you mean you haven't been able to find paperwork on St. Paul's?
No, we found for the local designation and the multi-resource designation, in the town of Rhinebeck, we do actually have properties on the National Register, and they're listed as being on the National Register. From the listings we found, St. Paul's is not one of them. It doesn't mean it shouldn't be. It could just mean that the actual effort, the paperwork going to the different government agencies to get it done hasn't been done yet, for whatever reason.
Well, I'll look into that, but we emailed about this, and there's also Colts Farmhouse, which is substantially contiguous to, or you said the property lines maybe meet in the middle or in which case it
Right.
might be contiguous to. And then, yeah, on that road, there's all these other historic buildings, which
Correct.
the law gives significance and protection to, but the Colts Farmhouse is missing, and I'll ask the pastor, you're saying that this property is not listed on the National Register?
I couldn't find it listed, and as I say, that doesn't necessarily mean it shouldn't be. It-
Well, it might have a different name, but I think in my letter, perhaps, I don't know if you looked in there, I believe I put all of the numbers for all the properties, but I'll look for it, 'cause I imagine that would be like a huge oversight on their part, because it's part of their, identity at this point, so.
Let me find it.
Well, we do have the list here in the map of all the historic, of all the designated properties, whoever designated, either on the National Register, was it done locally, the multi-resource district. And the fact that it's not on the National or State Register doesn't mean it shouldn't be, and doesn't diminish the historic significance of it. It's just in responding to this specific question, we haven't found the paperwork to show that either they're on the State or National Register
And it's not on
or
your,
nominated.
I've gone personally onto the CRIS, C-R-I-S website and found St. Paul's. And that's the State Historic Preservation Office, which I believe for New York has all the National Register listings. For example, if you go on the federal website, New York, for whatever reason, is not on there. They have other states, but they don't have New York. And so you go to the state website, and I've pulled, in my letter, you'll see, I've pulled the information from the state website, so.
right, so it's listed under the state, not the federal.
But I think.
The National Register is a federal designation.
Yeah.
Right,
Administered
national,
through the
federal, but
state.
New York State has its own designation.
No, the New York State, it's listed through the National Register, which is administered by the State Office of Parks, recreation and historic preservation here.
So I can't have something listed on New York State Historic Preservation
It's one and the
without
same.
being
It's
included
one
in
and
that?
the,
Right.
it's one and the same.
Which means it has to go through both federal and state agencies.
SHPO
to
is
get that.
actually the agency that advances the nomination to the federal level. So it has
So
to go
anything
through
listed
the...
under SHPO is automatically on the National Register?
It becomes, that's where the designation is applied.
Okay, I didn't know that. You certainly know more than I do. I'm shocked to hear that.
Well, I think,
I personally found it on the state website.
what we'll do is we will contact SHPO with a list of the properties and ask them what is their status within their, what status would they see beyond the local designations that the town of Rhinebeck has given to these properties.
There's a couple of things, in my opinion, that's going on with this question, which is, as part of the secret process, very specific to the National Register. That does not, in my personal opinion, diminish its significance locally if it's not. So you can answer this question specifically on this page, but we can determine that we feel it's of significant importance locally to warrant further examination. And I have thought a lot about this one because I think, and I'm not sure how we can get a better picture on it, there's not a lot of written documentation on Württemberg as a settlement. You know, when I look at the histories, when I look at the early histories of the county and everything, it hasn't been documented to the degree that I think it should be documented. And because when I look at the settlement pattern there, it goes beyond just the structures. It goes to the alignment of the road, and the fact that I think that roadscape is fairly intact from its earlier settlement period. So, you know, I'm interested in seeing a lot more information about not just individual houses, but the context of the early Württemberg settlement, because I think there's components of that that remain, including, as I said earlier, the road. I don't know if there's stone walls out there. I haven't seen that documented or not documented. But I think open land and pasture area probably was a significant component of what that settlement area looked like. So I'd like to see us...
I agree with that, but the lack of that information doesn't diminish the fact that it's significant.
No, I agree with you. I totally... and I'm asking for a way
Right.
that we can, and one of the ways that I think you might get at that, and it'll come up a little bit later, is I believe there should be a Phase 1 archaeology done on the property, which is virtually a literature search. Phase 1 doesn't require digging in the ground, and it doesn't require anything more than somebody looking at the written record to see if there's the potentiality for something.
Do we have history on this particular parcel at all? Anything?
I did a superficial look the last couple days, trying to look at all the resource material. I looked at all the books that have been written on the history of Rhinebeck.
I would again just point you guys to my letter. The pastor has written a book on Württemberg, which I have. They print it as you order it, so I have a copy. You guys are more than welcome to look at it. The innkeepers have a folder on their home, which, like I said at the last meeting, one of the kinship books by Margaret Herrick was like early.
Well, perhaps you can gather some of that material and make it
I can scan
available.
all for you, like
That would be-
drop it off.
That would be
That's fine.
terrific.
Because I have, like, my office is now filled with Württemberg history. So I would be more than willing to do that. I guess I know that the multiple resource application for, it included St. Paul's. St. Paul's had its own application. It was like the multiple resource district was, you know, one application, and then all the properties that got tagged onto it had their own application, and that's what St. Paul's was. And again, that link is in my letter, August 21st to you guys, and I can email you the PDF of that also if you want.
I think Woody's made a point earlier that he doesn't want to be
No,
personally...
I will send it to planning board.
Send it to Gretchen, and she'll make sure we get
Send
it.
to Gretchen, not Woody. Sorry, Woody. And I would just again say that I'm like 99.9% sure that St. Paul's is a registered property.
Okay.
And I will send you, and I will go home after this and send you guys that. So, but understood that even if it's not, you guys are willing to
But we know that it's a very historic area. We know all that, regardless of whether or not any official designation has been made. The official designations only happen if people, usually volunteers, really put in all the time to gather all the information, fill out the forms, and submit them to the different agencies, state and federal agencies, to get this sort of thing done. And it can take years to do it, and it can take a lot of research to develop the information. So it's not that the properties aren't deserving, it's very often that there's no one willing to do it or able to do it. Which, you know, when you're thinking how busy a lot of people are, they just don't have the time, or they don't think they're capable of doing it.
Yeah, no, I understand, I just swear it's been done.
One of the places that you've forgotten completely about that's a historic place is the bar on 9G there. What's the name of the one that's falling down around itself?
The one
Oh.
that sits there with trees growing?
Horns?
Yeah, I forget that.
That's,
All my kids think it's a historic building.
I don't think we want to know why.
We can nominate.
I don't think we want to know why.
We should do a site visit there.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. It's returning to its origins.
See, it's the end of the program, so that's why we bring it.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
I don't know.
Um,
Is it
So,
finished?
the Phase 1,
Confused.
what we're going to do when we get done with this, go down all the different
Wait,
recommendations that we're going to bring to our official, our planning board meeting on the 16th. So, because someone took good notes and it wasn't me. Okay. Is the project site within 5 miles of any officially designated and publicly accessible federal, state, or local scenic or aesthetic resource? The Hudson's listed. I believe Burger Hill is within...
Question are you on?
I'm on H. We just did archaeology, Phase 1 literature survey.
Last page.
I'm on the next one. I believe Burger Hill is within 5 miles, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so that should be listed. That's clearly, it's a public park. I don't know of any publicly accessible federal, state, or local scenic or aesthetic resource. I don't know if the Neighbors Gun Club would count. They're
Is the
on,
Landsman Kill Trail?
that's an interesting, I'm sure that those trails run within 5 miles of this. I mean, the
They
trails
run
go
over the top of
everywhere.
it.
Yeah,
I've been on them.
Okay.
Because I've
yeah, it goes through the back of my property,
been a
so
long
I'm
time,
familiar
but
with it.
No, they literally run down,
Are they officially designated? I'm not-
yeah, they're tagged.
Yes, what they do is the
They have
landsman
tags on the
kill,
trees.
basically, it's a handshake agreement with property owners and always has been.
Well, I'm only,
Really
que-
publicly,
they're not, I
publicly
mean,
accessible,
Well,
only if you're a member of the club and you're on a horse.
that's true. But
Well, they
they're,
cross my property, and people walk because they see the trails.
yeah, they do.
I mean, I
They
think they're
assume
important,
it's a
but they aren't
public.
officially designated. I mean, the Landsman Kill, I think when they did that, went through and said, would you allow us to come on your
They did.
property? And
Yeah, you get a
that's,
little pen and a pad of paper every year, and they say, thank you.
Oh, I've gotten lots of nice things.
But the fact that they put the little tag on the trees gives people the illusion. So no,
Yeah.
it's not
Not on my
officially
property, it
public,
doesn't.
but they're nice trails. And they run
Yeah.
all the way from my house, which is in the beginning of Wurtemberg Road, got to be a mile and a half away from what we're talking
Oh,
about.
they go up into Red Hook, they go down
But it
into
goes all the way down.
Hubbard and Clinton, they go into Clinton. There are miles and miles and miles of
Yeah.
them. It's remarkable.
We've got a couple problems here. It says within 5 miles. Every park in the community should be identified if you use that criteria.
Thompson Mazzarella would also be within 5 miles,
Umbrella,
That's pushing it.
you think?
I think that's pushing it. I think
Yeah.
you're talking about,
the one up
you're
by-
at least a mile and a half from my
Fire
house
tower.
and another 2 or 3
From
miles.
Ferncliff?
It would be tough.
I think in
Faircliff
this case, the officially designated and publicly accessible are the words that are meaningful to me.
Okay. Well, Burger Hill certainly,
Burger Hill is officially designated and publicly accessible. I agree with that. As far as the Landsman Kill and others, I don't know that
I
that's.
don't agree that it's publicly accessible.
no, that would be too far away. That way down
It's too
in...
far away.
Yeah, that'd be too far away.
Going back to publicly accessible, you join the club, does a club count as part of the public?
I think they're...
Publicly accessible usually means to any
Anybody.
member of the
Yeah,
public. I
like the,
think
like
that's-
the, like the Rhine Cliff waterfront or something like that, I think, yeah.
We should be splitting hairs
Yeah.
on this.
Okay.
It's a
We will split no hairs.
subject.
Is the project site located within a designated river corridor under the Wild Scenic and Recreational Rivers Program? I think the answer is no. Okay, now we're down to additional information. What are we looking for? I think among the things we've discussed tonight, certainly we need a habitat study done. We need someone to get on the ground and go in there. We've used Hudsonia before, and I know that they do good work. I know they know the area, and I know they've already done a lot of the work already to prepare to go there, so it might not be quite as onerous a task for them to do it. So that would be my suggestion.
So, hold on. I believe someone mentioned that they'd already talked to someone about this project.
They probably asked for information, yes.
I called Hudsonia, and it's in the letter,
Mhm.
thing that we spoke about. I asked them what if they could tell me what was on the site, because obviously I can't go on there. And they referred me to the maps and looked at the maps and told me what they thought would be on there, which was potentially a landing turtle. It said it was within the 2,000, whatever, in the letter, there's a conservation zone that's identified on there, there's a stream.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if Jeff doesn't feel comfortable using them, because I called them one day and, let's leave you guys.
Uh,
Tell them that you were against the project and that you told them?
Did I tell them I was against the project?
Let's not go there.
Yeah, we don't, yeah, I agree.
need-
We don't need to do that. I think basically what they were referring you to was to the town resources, which Hudsonia did for the town, the mapping and the conservation areas, and
That we
that's...
paid a lot of money for?
Yes, we did, and we've gotten our money's worth out of it. And I personally don't see why that should be a
No, I'm just
conflict.
kidding.
No, I know you are.
It was a very intensive study, and
Yeah.
it cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Jeff calls, he'll probably support the project, really.
Well-
I mean, so,
I think we're going to, you know what my feeling, I value Hudsonia's view. I have worked with them, and so I know they do good work, and I know they're very objective. And I think since they did all this work already, it would be a pretty simple thing for them to do this habitat
To
study there.
get more site-specific
I
rather
agree,
than
but
generic.
in all fairness, I think if someone came up with another suggestion for another party, it should be entertained.
And that's why we're not going to make a decision tonight on the
Okay.
6th. We're going to wait for 2 weeks, and if there's a better option, then yes, we'll have that presented to us on the 16th.
With a good reason.
With a good reason,
Yep.
yes. We're also talking about doing a literature Phase 1 archaeology study to ascertain exactly what might be there, to try and give us a little traction in terms of the history. I believe,
And
We
I
talked
would,
about an environmental review, just
yes,
to check.
for potential spills, things
Yeah,
like that. See
yeah.
if we can get
Records.
information on that.
And
as
then-
far as the archaeology, just to back up 1 second, I'm going to kind of reserve the option if the Phase 1 archaeology does not do a sufficient look at the historical context to come back to that
Okay,
after we've seen. Normally, a Phase 1 archaeology would have to do that as a precursor
Yeah.
to the study, so we'll just,
okay.
Meaning, Phase 1 archaeology was doing basically a study of the history of the use of the property. and then-
normally they have to do somewhat of a study of the history in order to get the context for what archaeology resources might be there.
Okay, but then you're saying,
If
to
it
go
doesn't-
further, that means digging?
No, no.
Oh, okay.
Well, it might. If a Phase 1 study,
It would have to be really strong to impose that kind of,
to go to a Phase 2?
to a very strong indicator that there's some significant.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, I
Yeah.
just want to make sure.
I mean, they're not just, it's not going to be like, well, maybe there was. They would
Right.
have to have something in the literature search that would document an activity there that might have resulted in a resource.
Michael, one of the things that we have to find out is we have to have a succinct description of site, whether it's the 12, the 16 acres or the 2.5 acres.
You need clarification on that.
And Michael,
And the other thing, yes,
maybe you were just about to say that, we were also going to have someone go look at the property.
I was
and
just going to say that.
then go
We
back.
also need to have a visual analysis done, especially in terms of the limitation on the area that it looks as if can be used for the screening for things of that sort. I don't know. That's what I got out of that, Richard. I don't know what you think.
They're labeling, they're saying solar power established co-principal use on a leased site within a parcel on which another site or other uses is located.
But
Yes,
they're, but they're limiting the actual site for the solar farm to no more than, I don't, what does it say there?
2.5.
2.5 acres.
Yeah, no, and I knew that.
Just
I,
just so we're all on the same page, whatever the definition is, we should all be on the same page.
So you said you were going to get counsel on,
Right,
Yeah.
exactly what that means. But we do need to have a visual analysis done, obviously, because the question of, are we going to use berms, are we using foliage, are we using a combination, whatever, we need to have someone tell us what's going to work. First of all, we need to tell them that it can be screened so that the thing is not visible. Secondly, we need to know, okay, what is the best way to do it?
Okay, now, when we're doing the visual analysis, someone has to identify the points from which that visual analysis are taken. Is it from every house on the road? Is it from 9G? Is it from Burger Hill Park? Someone has to define where that visual analysis should be taken from.
I think it's the property line.
Yeah.
I completely disagree. We had an applicant in front of us just a couple of months ago, and we sat there and joked about saying, well, what do? Rent a boat to go see what the visual impact is? The glare and the light on the river? Visual impact is the impact that this change makes on the area. When I gaze
Does that
across the
mean-
river at Rhinecliff, we don't want to be tarnished and have ugly neon lights and houses. It's very important to maintain our image, and that has been our standing. This is not limited to the property owners, it's anybody who can see that property.
And I'm just gonna say, someone from Mountain View Road contacted me concerned that they would see it.
Well, the law itself does specify that the installation cannot throw glare on any property or public right-of-way or public roadway or anything like that. So what Richard's saying, I think, is basically true. It's not necessarily just that specific area where the problem would be. So we need to hire someone and then work with them to put together exactly what we need looked at, what we need to get from this study. Once again, I've had a recommendation of George Jane because he's done this for cell towers, for other plants of this or things of that sort, and he has a very good reputation. He's willing to work with us. He has worked with, I know with John Lyons, he's worked with him, he's worked in other communities in installations which could be visually unattractive. If someone has someone better they know who could do it, that's fine. But I know this gentleman does very good work. He has an excellent reputation, and he would be in a position to tell us, first of all, can you effectively screen this from the different areas which it needs to be screened from, and how can you best do that to ensure that you're effectively screening it, because that's what we need to know.
Did you say his last name's Jane, J-A-N-E?
Yes, George Jane.
James,
James,
Plural.
with an S? Oh,
Jane's like J-A-N-E-S.
Janes.
my spelling is not my strong suit. So it's also a visual analysis that we have to do. And I think those are the areas of information we're looking for.
Well, I just went through, and everybody double-checked me. You talked about habitat assessment, you talked about Phase 1 archaeology, you talked about visual assessment, visual analysis. We talked about resolving the question of what constitutes the site. You talked about a sound review
Right.
or study of some kind. I don't know exactly what kind, but that was a major discussion point. You asked for a planting plan for the pollinators.
Well, we wanted to know how they're going to prepare the ground.
Right. There was a question about the type of forestation and how that was calculated. There was further information we were looking for regarding the activities of the church, school, children, age. You talked about an environmental review, and you had questions, significant questions in the area about contamination history.
An environmental study.
Yeah, those are the same
Yeah.
thing. I think.
Testing of
Okay,
the
so we'll
area.
put those together.
Is the church within 1,500 feet of this site?
It's adjacent, I think, on one property line. The
Well, maybe
church
adjacent
property.
property line, but is it 1,500 feet away from the site?
I think so, I think it's like.
The solar collectors.
I'm sorry, how
I
much?
thought based on the site plan, Jeff would know, obviously, I think 600 feet.
600?
It's less than
What is the difference between co-principal And principal. Why would this site not be the principal?
I think what they're basically doing in this law, because usually you only have one principal structure, function on a property, they're allowing to be co-principal for solar installations.
So, in any other application that comes before us, we have the principal dwelling.
Correct, and everything else would be like an accessory,
So why
whatever.
isn't this considered the principal use of this property?
It would be, since it's the only use that's going to go onto the property.
Wasn't there some discussion
clause-
about the shed, about the garage shed being used?
Well, that could be an
Okay.
accessory to this for storing whatever.
No.
No?
I thought there was a discussion at one point about,
We need to check go further in the law where the area of bulk regulations are defined in different times as allowed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I say that only because this section that we were talking about refers to something
Right.
only as a co-principal.
It is allowed principal use, and for homeowners, for a homeowner thing,
If
It's
it's
an accessory
established as
use.
a co-principal use,
Right.
it refers to this, not as principal. I'm just saying, this is what they wrote.
Right, and that's why we've got to check that out and
Yeah.
find out exactly what's
I
going
think John Lyons obviously needs to weigh in on all of these things.
Will you let us all know if you get clarity on this definition of the site?
Yes.
Is that the same thing you're talking about now?
That's, yes, exactly what would constitute the site of the project. And,
was it not left open that Mr. Sherrod might develop some use for the barn?
I think it was one of our big questions. What can he do
Right,
now that he has this
right.
sublet piece of property in the middle?
And I
think
thought
the
something was
neighbors-
talking about a shed, or maybe there would be power going to that building, or a workshop. I thought that was
and
offered
conceivably,
as information.
in addition to this, under the co-principal, you could put a residence on the
Right,
property.
or any other allowed principal
Right,
use.
principal use.
In the district.
But then that got into what about whatever screening, I guess maybe this goes back to the site.
Yes,
Whatever
yes.
screening is on the remainder of the property, if you rip it down to build a house, and then part of the plant becomes visible to the neighbor.
That's one of the questions that we need to have answered, exactly what's going to be required for permanent screening to ensure that it doesn't become visible in a situation such as that.
Right, if in the situation that you use the rest of the property for something else.
Correct. We have to figure out how any other use on the property would be constrained so that it could not, in any way, shape, or form, disrupt the necessary screening.
Aside from that, Michael, what about this issue of if only the 2 acres are being leased, whose responsibility it is to maintain the areas outside of that leased
Well, that
area?
is the other question. I mean, at this point, I believe that the application is just to lease that for, that's what the proposal is.
Right.
And I think the question that I had in my mind, what if greater land is needed for proper screening, such as
Were we
a, such
not
as a...
told that we would at some point see at least a draft of the lease agreement?
We
Yeah,
asked for it.
but I think part of what's also going to drive this is what if our visual person comes back and tells us, well, in order to screen it adequately, you're going to need 5 acres, or something like that. Are we going to be in a position, as a condition of approval, to say, in order to achieve the necessary screening and whatnot, the site has to be expanded to, say, 5 acres?
The leased area. is
The
that
leased
what
area,
you're
I'm sorry, which would be the project site. The
saying?
project site is the leased area.
Contradicts what the law now says.
It's,
Correct.
yeah, it seems to.
2.5 is the limit.
It seems to, yeah.
It's an important question.
It's a very important question.
Right, I mean, you conceivably could lease 2 acres or whatever it is for the purpose of a solar array, and lease additional property for the purpose of certain plantings that have nothing necessarily
Well,
to do.
you see, I'm not sure, because that would actually be part of the project, and then one of the conditions of approval to permit the project would be to lease that land as part,
Right.
and I don't know legally.
Right,
We don't have a lawyer here tonight, so I don't know.
All right, so we've,
But these are questions we need to have answered. I think
Since it
these
would
have
be
come up.
another site, it probably wouldn't float, because this site has to have its own screening.
Yes, correct.
now what about part 2? When do we do that?
You mean part 3?
Part 3.
Part 2 of identification of potential project impacts.
Ah. Well, we could do that right now. I think we've already done it, actually, by going through what we have here.
Well, I don't know.
I don't,
Some of
And since I only have,
What page is that?
part 1
it's
here.
not with this. We don't have copies of it.
Okay, well, I just pulled this out from what the town
Yeah.
board did.
Yeah.
Peek at it.
Part 2 is usually just a couple pages. And I think basically by doing Part 1, we've done Part 2 and have identified
Take a look at
potentially...
this.
Is that Part 2?
It is part 2.
Oh.
And I don't know if it's premature to do that before this additional information is
Yeah,
available.
Could be, but
Yeah.
That's my thought.
just
Because-
raising the issue.
Because basically what Part 2 is, it's for us to go through and see, are there significant problems that the project has brought up? And then to go through and see whether or not we feel, when we get to Part 3, whether or not they can be mitigated. And I think until we have the information, I think we sort of did Part 2 in a way now. These are the potential problems that we're seeing, like potential spills, visual uses
Yeah,
such
but
as
I
the
don't-
church uses, things like that.
Yeah, but I think
But we're
you
not in
still
the-
need to do this in the future.
We need to do
And
it, I think-
I think that you have outstanding questions
Yeah.
that relate, that I'd like to see answered before.
Yeah.
Before we do that.
Before
And
I
then do that.
But we
And
will
al-
get to it.
Yes, and also hopefully the information we can receive from the different consultants we're going to be using, the different experts, will help us to answer when we get to Part 3. Can this issue that we identified as potentially significant, can it be properly mitigated?
Right.
And that's going to depend upon the information that we receive.
Okay.
So, if you're agreeable, I know how to contact Mr. Janes, and I know how to contact Hudsonia. I think we need to find, I think there's, maybe in Hyde Park, there's a good environmental, firm that does spills.
Yeah,
and
there's one in Poughkeepsie that we
Yeah,
used.
we can do that. The noise thing, I don't know. I don't know how we're going to do that. We're going to have to work on that. I'm not really sure how we're going to do that. The archaeology, I don't know, maybe Melody, you could recommend some good
I
firm.
can, not recommending anybody. I
Well, not
can
recommend,
share
but some names, some competent names.
I think we're talking about maintenance of the surrounding area.
As one of the issues, yes.
Why? What if he has grass that's this high today? What are we gonna do? Tell him he has to have a
No.
golf course grass?
No, the only reason we're talking about areas surrounding where the plant is whether or not those areas are needed to do the proper screening of the plant, outside of the actual roughly 2 or whatever acres it is, of the actual fenced plant area, which would be the
Maintenance
lease.
of the screening only,
Correct,
not...
Right.
correct. No, just the screening, just the screening.
Because I think that's pretty intrusive.
No, no,
We
it would-
Start telling him that he's gotta cut his grass 6 inches from the
No,
ground.
no. It's just the screening, and at this point, we don't know to what extent other lands may be required for proper screening.
Are we- Given the fact that it's, according to this, if I went by that, which I don't know if I agree with because of the
Yeah.
principal versus co-principal, but, I mean, what authority do we have to maintain, put demands on the other site, which is the property that surrounds this?
Basically, we have the authority to set conditions on any approval to ensure that such things as visual intrusion, glare, things like that are mitigated. And to the extent that more land than is currently being proposed as part of the solar plant may not be adequate, such as a berm may not be able to be built.
Right, I get that, but let's pretend we put up an ugly fence, and everything's fine, and it stays within the 1.6 acres. In addition to that, we're saying that we're going to place demands on the surrounding piece of property to maintain the existing screening,
Only,
so it's not clear cut.
well, if the fence actually does the screening, is adequate and does the screening for all potential points of view, then you wouldn't need to worry about what's outside the fence.
If you want to look at a fence.
Then you're talking about, once again, expanding the site of the
So
project.
existing vegetation actually screens a fence or whatever the.
Right, but then you're talking about expanding the site of the project, because the screening is part of the project. It's an essential part of the project. And as you say, I need to find out exactly how far this goes. I don't know.
But if this, in order to fall into that category, if it means something else has to be put on the site as the principal use, I think that's going to be a big topic.
Yeah, I don't think it does. I think this this is allowing two principal uses, like a residence and the solar farm, where you're not allowed to do that anywhere else in the town. You're only allowed to have one principal use, then you can have accessories to that use. such as you have a house, you can have a garage, you can have a swimming pool, you can have a, other accessory, you can
I
accessory
understand
dwelling.
that. Which one's the principal, which one's the co-principal?
What I'm saying is, I don't think it has to have a co-principal. It can.
Right,
And
right.
and so if it's the solar plant, that's going to be the principal use.
It's the only use at this
Well,
juncture.
Yes.
But
Yes.
if there are co-principal uses, then there will be no singular principal use. There will be one or more, two or more co-principal uses.
I would agree with that
Yes.
interpretation.
Yes.
And there would have to be an application to come to this board, and
Oh, yeah.
that's when it'll be
Yeah.
decided.
There would be a whole new
I think we
application.
should spin our wheels on something that,
May or may not happen. No, it would be a whole new application. Some of the questions we've raised tonight might also apply to that in terms of, let's say, spills, things like that. If they were going to build something somewhere else on the property that wasn't checked for this particular project, then once again, that same sort of issue might come up. Particularly if something is, fouled a well or something like that, you'd be particularly concerned about that, I would think, if you're doing any sort of residential use, anything of that sort. So, I think we have an excellent list. I'm glad someone took notes because
Yes,
I can't read
excellent
mine.
notes.
If you don't object, I will contact Hudsonia and Mr. Janes. If you can get a list together of potential archaeological firms, I think we need to then look into the environmental testing firms.
Norbert,
Norbert Lazar,
what was it, Norbert was,
Quisner.
yeah.
Yeah, he was a wetlands,
Just a wetlands
guy,
delineator,
yeah.
okay.
We had him doing on that thing on Acker
Okay,
Cook. He was
okay.
wetlands.
I just couldn't remember what his
Um,
specialty was.
We need to figure out how we're going to do the noise issue. We need information about the church, about, functions at the church, programs they have for people, other than just Sunday, other programs they have.
Annual turkey supper's going off yesterday.
Yeah, I know,
You
that's
might ask,
very popular.
when you're talking to George Janes, you might ask him about noise.
Yeah,
He
I
might-
will.
It's a somewhat related field, and he may know of
Well, I
someone.
know he's worked with wind towers, and I know noise from the
So
wind generators
He may have some
sometimes.
thoughts
He may have
about,
some ideas, yeah,
I'm going to send you the location of the solar array.
in Germantown.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's above Germantown. And also,
The one
with,
in Germantown is a 4 megawatt, if my understanding, system that would be about 8 to 10 times the size of this. Uses completely different inverter technology than what we have, so if you want to go have a look at that one, please do, but it's like going and listening to a Mack truck versus a passenger car. It's not the same
Yeah. Well, it'll give us a starting point anyway, and it'll give us a starting point.
Where is it located?
it's above Germantown.
It's up towards on the south side of Hudson. It's
can't
a-
come up, the
it's a
company
development
that's,
meter project that serves Columbia Memorial Hospital, if I think it's like
Hmm.
what about the one over
Right,
in,
and I think it
Isopus,
can-
are you
it can
familiar
be
with that?
Operated in a sound
Yes.
room, it can be
The,
taped,
one on the
and then
landfill.
you can take that
yeah,
to
the
the
one that's
site.
down there by Hercules, I guess. The Hercules issue.
Different technology.
Michael,
Yes.
we were just discussing one way to perhaps think about this. The equipment that is going to be used on this site that makes noise, it seems to us that you should be able to take this equipment to, let's say, a sound room where there is an expert person who's able to tape this,
Mhm.
make it sound, and then take that sound equipment out to the site and play it, right?
Mhm.
And then go walk around and see whether you can hear it.
Yeah.
I think the manufacturer should have some specs about.
There's cut sheets on all
Well-
the sounds and everything that are known, they've got to be published.
Right.
The manufacturer does have specs.
Yeah,
Well, is the manufacturer willing to work with you in providing this information?
They've been submitted to this board.
What if we had
But
those...
not in an audible form, right?
That's
They've
what we
been
want.
submitted in a written form.
I mean, is
And
there...
I think the conundrum for a lot of people is it's difficult for inexperienced people to translate something in a written form to what
They
it's,
described it as a muffin
Yeah.
fan noise similar to a cooling fan on a desktop computer.
But wouldn't we be able to, if we knew the sound it generates, say 60, whatever, to find some sound-generating device that could, some white noise, whatever device that could generate 60, whatever, and go to the site with that, at where they're going to be, and then do studies around the perimeter, just similar to the gun club when it was done with guns, as opposed to,
Well, the difference is that the noise levels are about 5 or 6 orders of magnitude different. I think you should, or suggest maybe you refer to your town engineer. And I think if your town engineer, they will understand inverse square law and sound attenuation. And if they look at the specifications in the factor, they will be able to do their own calculations as I did at the public hearing.
Mhm.
The mathematical calculations that show what the sound level will be at the property line.
well, we could certainly do that.
I can provide those, and I would encourage you to take those to your town engineer.
Well, we can do that, but I think it would be kind of nice if we could just generate the noise through some device on the site, and then just do studies at the property line, just walk around the perimeter of the property
You
and
have to
see,
generate like the decibel level at
Right.
the site.
Right.
The simple
Correct.
sound, whether it's a giant fan that can produce that volume of sound or something, that's like, sort of like jerry-rigging a sound study, and then go to the property line, which would be 160 feet or whatever it is away,
and see what
Bill
you,
will even let you go onto his property line, stand around the rock wall, and listen, that's one way to do it.
we could even just go around the periphery of the actual,
Well, why don't we
Very
talk,
short.
why don't we talk
Yeah.
to Ray? We can
We'll
give
come-
this
You
assignment to
could
Ray.
also ask a different, maybe solar company in the Hudson Valley if they're willing to, for a fee or something, I don't know, put on a demonstration of some sort with these solar edge inverters.
well, we'll come up with some way to determine exactly what it sounds
I
like,
think
'cause-
we should rely on the manufacturer's specs.
well,
Specs are nice.
Specs are
Because-
nice.
But I'm still not getting 26 miles a gallon on my Acura. I'm getting whatever. The manufacturers like to make their specs and say, oh, no, we're wonderful, everything's great, but they're not necessarily accurate. They put out what they want, and there's no substitution for given the contour, given the vegetation, for this opportunity to slip by and say, oh, it looks good on paper. That's not okay.
we should be able to get someone that can generate the decibel
should.
level we need,
Yeah.
that we can then go around the perimeter of the property and ascertain.
It's going to sound, because it's not going to sound like, rustling leaves or like birds chirping, it's going to sound like that equipment behind you.
Right.
Or like an air conditioning unit or something.
It's not going to tend to be intermittent.
I mean, Michael, this issue's going to come up again,
Oh, yeah.
presumably.
Absolutely.
So
Why
if
can't we
there's
assign
the
it to Ray?
ability to get
Okay.
on tape this sound, that's going to be helpful
Okay,
in future.
I like Melody's suggestion. We're going to assign this to our engineer to come up with a way to do this testing, and so that we can go out with him, or with his designated whatever, and walk the property, set this up where it would be within the confines of the system, proposed system, and walk the property with a meter and see what we hear.
And I think that will probably take a lot of the pressure off of people being able to say, what if?
Right.
You get to listen to it.
Get
Right.
the actual.
Everyone's
And he
given
may
plenty
need
of
to
notice.
work with a sound technician,
Right.
and that's
If he does, he
But
does.
let's
That's
task
okay.
him with finding
Yeah.
that
Right.
person and making
Because
it
he
work.
is an
I agree.
engineer, and he can
He's-
understand the specs, and he can put this
He's
together.
our resource, and he
Right.
has the capability of reviewing what Jeff has submitted and asking his own questions and
Right.
moving on from there.
And coming up with a way to verify,
Good.
And maybe
So-
also, I don't know, obviously it's up to your sound engineer or your engineer, but you mentioned the different times of year sounds different.
He'll handle all
Yeah,
that.
we're going to make sure that he knows this is a 12-month of the year.
He's a smart man,
answer.
he'll
Yeah,
figure that out.
he's good. He's put up with us for years.
Yeah, I think the best way to do that is the analysis that I provided at the last planning board meeting, where I assumed that there was there were no attenuating
Right.
features or obstacles between where the sound was generated by the property. And in other words, there's a free air condition that was assumed. I also assumed the worst case condition where all of the inverters and the transformer were co-located at a single point. And then someone else in the planning board brought up earlier, meetings that they're not co-located, they're spread out, which tends to reduce the concentrated sound emissions that come from.
Well, we're going to put this before Ray and
I'll put it before us.
and see what he comes up with
We'll put it
for
forward.
us. So we're going to put it before him, see what he comes up with for us. I do think this is going to be a ongoing issue with other installations of this sort, and it would be nice if we could put this to bed today. Well, not today, but with this one. So I think it'll make things a little easier for people, and hopefully it'll instill a little confidence that people know that we really are attempting to make this work for everyone. So what I will do is I will contact a few people, you're going to contact a few people, I will talk to Ray. What else did we have that we wanted to do?
I think that's it.
I think that's it. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone. I think we have quite a list of things that need to be done. Hopefully, we will be able to do this in a pretty, won't take forever. I don't think it should. I think it should be pretty straightforward, even the noise thing. So on the 16th, at our next meeting, we will, as a board, we will then vote on taking these steps, having these studies done. This is just a workshop tonight. It'll also give us time to think about anything else we think we've left out, any other options, things of that sort that we feel need to be done. You know, we have 2 weeks to, think it through. So anyone else have anything I want to say?
Thank you.
Okay, well then, I don't know if we have to adjourn the meeting, but Woody, what the heck?
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you all very much. And I want to thank the people in the audience for participating in a very helpful way.